What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there today. We're talking about quarterbacks that we're going to start and sit here in Week 7 fantasy football, and we got some big names on bye this week. No Josh Allen, no Jalen Hurts, no Kirk Cousins. 3 guys inside the top 10 right there. Matthew Stafford probably not being missed by a whole lot of people, but still he's also on bye this week. So we're going to have to try to find some other options to fill those holes. Maybe some guys that you grabbed off the waiver wire. We're not taking a lot of time though. We're diving right into the content. And if you enjoy timestamps, hit the like button because here we go. Thursday night football, the New Orleans Saints and my own Arizona Cardinals. I really don't know if you could notice it or not though either, but I'm trying to overemphasize my Cardinals. I'm just trying to get excited like everybody else for their team. Even Jets fans are excited right now. I'm not even excited. It's horrible for a Cardinals fan right this second, but maybe it's going to get better. But first, we'll start off with the New Orleans side of things. You got Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. Who's going to start? I have a feeling that right now New Orleans is basically just going to play eeny, meeny, miny, mo to figure out which one starts this week because neither one of them are 100% healthy in a short week. But does it really matter when it comes to fantasy football? They need more weapons in this offense is what they really need. They're throwing the ball 34 times a game, which isn't bad in New Orleans, but 8 or so of those a game are going to running backs, so they're not even pushing the ball deeper down the field. Now a matchup going up against Arizona, they're allowing the 11th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks at 18.7 per game. Michael Thomas still questionable. Jarvis Landry. Chris Olave did clear concussion protocol. Finally, we could have him back here this week. Deontay Hardy. How about Adam Troutman? Both, Dalton and Winston themselves are banged up. Mark Ingram is questionable. Multiple offensive linemen are questionable. Marshawn Lattimore on the defensive side of the football, questionable. Everybody's hurt in New Orleans right this second. There's just too many variables, and it's a Thursday night game, which has a tendency to suck. So no, I'm not starting either Dalton or Jameis. What about Kyler? How do you not start Kyler Murray, right? I mean, he's currently the quarterback 6 overall in fantasy football, but only has 4 total touchdowns over his last 4 games played, and he hasn't thrown for over 250 yards in a game in a month. He's still throwing the ball quite a bit. 42.7 attempts per game is second highest in the NFL. Going up against New Orleans, we know about their injuries, right? They're allowing just over 18 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. The running game is banged up with James Conner and Benjamin. We're not going to have Hollywood Brown. We have multiple offensive linemen that are questionable. But now we get back DeAndre Hopkins, which is a big addition. And they added Robbie Anderson, which honestly, it's gross. I'm not even excited about Robbie Anderson is a one-trick pony that hasn't produced anything in years. How are we supposed to get excited? Plus, he just causes commotions on the sidelines and argues with coaches. Dude thinks he's better than he really is. I don't know what to... I'm a Cardinals fan, and I'm just upset right now. I mean, at least Kyler Murray had his first 100-yard rushing game last week. That was great to see, and he's going to have to do it again. He's going to be a start, but not as confident as I have been in the past. How about we move to Sunday football now? We got the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens. We'll start it off with Jacoby Brissett. He's currently quarterback 18 overall on the season, but only one game all year has he had multiple touchdowns. And that's what we need from fantasy quarterbacks nowadays. In a league that scores like this, if you don't have a quarterback that can produce multiple touchdowns each week, they're a liability. Now, they're throwing the ball 34 times a game, going up against Baltimore, which allows the 4th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks at 21.9 per contest. Another team with an offensive line that's kind of beat up, missing multiple Pro Bowlers right now is not ideal heading into a weekend game here. It's just not enough touchdowns at the quarterback position. No. A lot of them going the way of Nick Chubb, which, trust me, I don't mind that either, but not enough going the way of the passing game. I'm going to continue to sit Jacoby Brissett for Lamar Jackson. We're not sitting Lamar Jackson. He's down to quarterback 2 on the season, despite having back-to-back down-ish games for Lamar Jackson. Only 3 touchdowns over his last 3 games combined, but he's really being saved by his rushing upside once again right now. He's averaging over 60 yards rushing in his last 3 games. The pass attempts still pretty low, averaging right around 30 per game, 25th in the league. Cleveland middle of the pack against opposing quarterbacks, allowing 16 fantasy points per game. Another team, multiple offensive linemen banged up. What about J.K. Dobbins? Does he play? Sounds like Rashad Bateman could be back this week. And then they just signed DeSean Jackson, who hasn't done anything since like 2017 either. So I'm not overly excited about that. A guy that, sure, you can have him run some go routes down the sideline. Maybe it helps stretch the field a little bit more. Maybe it helps open up things more for Mark Andrews. Cool, but I'm not overly excited about DeSean Jackson himself. Now going against Cleveland, the third easiest team in the NFL to run on. I expect them to try to utilize that running game once again in Baltimore. May bring down the overall ceiling for Lamar, but keeps his floor safe with that rushing upside. He's going to remain a start. How about Tampa Bay and Carolina? We'll start off with Tom Brady, currently quarterback 14 overall. And if you want to hear a WTF stat for this matchup, Brady in his first 6 games of this season has only thrown for more than 1 touchdown in 1 game so far. Has 8 touchdowns to 1 interception on the season, but at this point last year had 17 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Obviously, not scoring like they did last year in Tampa Bay. They're still throwing the ball a butt ton, over 41 times per game. Going up against Carolina, though, they're pretty solid against opposing quarterbacks, allowing only 15.9 fantasy points per game. Cameron Brate, Julio Jones, they're still beat up. But other than that, overall, not too many injuries there in Tampa Bay. The offense is just... they're just kind of misfiring right now. Eventually, they're going to pick it up. I kind of feel like this is the same situation just a couple years ago in Tampa Bay, and end of the season when they really got on the same page, they made a run. It's kind of what I'm feeling right now for Tampa Bay overall. A lot of people want to blame the personal problems of Tom Brady. Does that play a part? Sure. He's human, like everyone else, but he still has Mike Evans, he still has Chris Godwin, and he still plays in an offense that's throwing the ball over 40 times a game. At some point, he's going to pick it up, and they're going to score points. We're still starting Tom Brady. For the Carolina Panthers, I don't care who starts in this game. I don't care if it's PJ Walker. I don't care if it's Sam Darnold, who just got designated to return off the IR. I don't care if Baker Mayfield's in a walking boot. I don't care who it is. I'm not starting anyone for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, it just basically makes me gag at this point. Now, it sounds like head coach Steve Wilks says that PJ Walker should be available this week. Okay, that doesn't make me feel any better because this is just another opportunity. Maybe he can't make it the entire game. They're only throwing the ball 30 times a contest going up against Tampa Bay, whose secondary is a little bit beat up, only allowing 16.1 fantasy points per game. But more than anything, this just has to do with injuries at the quarterback position, no stability, and a horrible offense in Carolina. No more time wasted on the Panthers quarterback. What about the Atlanta Falcons and Cincinnati Bengals? Marcus Mariota. It took him a huge week 6, but now all of a sudden he's back up into the top 12 as quarterback 12 on the season. Had his second game of the season with multiple touchdowns and scored his 3rd rushing touchdown against the 49ers just last week. Overall, a great game. But the volume is just crazy low. Only 22.8 pass attempts per game, ranks 31st in the NFL. Now they're going up against Cincinnati, one of the best defenses in the league against opposing quarterbacks, allowing only 12.2 fantasy points per game, which is 5th fewest. Even though there's no major injury concerns right there affecting Marcus Mariota, the rushing upside is helping. But the passing opportunities are just so low, it's really limiting the chances that we can get those touchdowns that we need to make him a weekly start. Kyle Pitts has struggled all year. Got a touchdown last week. Can we count on that every single week? Not just yet. Not in this matchup. Still going to sit Marcus Mariota. What about Joe Burrow? Now, I knew when I saw him show up to the game last week in the national championship LSU Jamar Chase jersey that he was about to go down, right? Back in New Orleans there at the Superdome, you knew Joe Burrow was going to get nasty, and he did. A huge week 6 for Joe Burrow. He's now had at least 2 touchdowns in 4 straight games, has rushing touchdowns in back-to-back games. Show him what you got, Joe Burr. Also, throwing the ball 38 times a contest. Plus, the pass attempts have now increased in back-to-back games. 3 straight weeks with increased pass attempts in this offense. Great job, Zach Taylor. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Continue to throw the ball in Cincinnati. It's what you do really well. Now a matchup going up against Atlanta. They allow almost 20 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And actually, I'm going to go over to Prize Picks right now, and I'm going to smash the over on Joe Burrow's passing prop, which is currently set at 262.5. That's a number he's beaten in 3 of the last 4 games he's played, and definitely has the opportunity to do it here again. If you haven't signed up for Prize Picks yet, you need to. Download the app. app. You sign up for a new account, use the referral code Headliners when you do so. You only have to deposit a minimum of $10 to try it, and we'll match your deposit all the way up to $100, so make sure you try it out. But yeah, definitely going over there and doing that for Joe Burrow. No other main injury concerns right now. The offensive line starting to play a little bit better, but the X factor for me is T. Higgins. A healthy T. Higgins. Having multiple wide receiver ones in your lineup is not a bad thing, especially in a pass-first offense. We're starting to see T. Higgins get back to full health, and I love that for Joe Burrow. What about the Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys? Start off with Jared Goff, who's still fringe top 12, despite already having his bye week and an awful week 5 leading up to the bye week. Can we get this offense back on track? We know that the Detroit offense was one of the tops in the league prior to their bye. They're throwing the ball over 37 times a game, 12th most in the NFL. But now they're going up against Dallas, and Dallas only allows 13.4 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, which is one of the best in the league. Still some unknowns here as well. We're expecting DeAndre Swift back, but we don't know for sure. What about DJ Chark? Can he come back healthy here after the bye? But like usual with the Lions, they're probably going to be playing from behind here once again. A difficult road game, forcing Jared Goff to have to throw. He's going to be a low-end start for me here this week. What about the return of Dak Prescott here in Dallas? And let's just call this the start of the season for Dak, because week 1 was a long time ago. He didn't even play the entire game. A lot has changed since then. Dallas throwing the ball right around 31 times a game with Cooper Rush. 23rd in the league. I have to expect that number to increase with Dak Prescott under center. And then he gets a matchup going up against Detroit, who allows almost 23 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, which is second most in the NFL. There's no other new injuries here in Dallas. The offensive line is still banged up, but Dak Prescott will have Michael Gallup back, something he didn't have in week 1. Dalton Schultz still questionable, and then Dak himself, what does he feel like coming back off of that injury? But this is a home game in a great matchup that he has the ability to put up points in on a team that needs to keep winning if they want to stay near the top of this division. Some good teams there in the NFC East. The Cowboys can't afford to start losing games. Not the safest play at all, but it's really hard to sit Dak Prescott here this week. He's going to be a start. How about the New York Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars, as my son used to say years and years ago? For Daniel Jones, though, he's currently quarterback 15 overall. He's on a team that's 5-1 right now. And honestly, I still can't find any interest in wanting to start him in fantasy football. It's the peaks and the valleys, right? What are you going to get on a weekly basis from Daniel Jones? He's had 4 total touchdowns in the last 4 weeks, but he's actually had 2 games with 2 touchdowns apiece and 0 in the others, so you can't even count on it each and every week. He's only throwing the ball 27 times a game. He hasn't thrown for more than 27 pass attempts in a month, which is 29th in the league. The Jaguars' defense isn't bad. They're only allowing 16 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. It was great for him to get back Wan'Dale Robinson, but Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, does it matter about Kenny Golladay? I mean, can we just wash Kenny Golladay? Is anybody really expecting anything from him at this point, even if he were to return? I am not. Full disclosure, dude is done, right? But still, Kadarius Toney could help this offense. I like the occasional rushing upside that we see from Daniel Jones, but he's just not one of those guys that I can really rely on weekly, and he's going to remain a sit for me. For Trevor Lawrence, he's currently sitting at quarterback 11, now has multiple touchdown games in 4 of the last 6 games he's played, plus has rushed now for over 20 yards in back-to-back games, and he's starting to do more with less. On the season, they're throwing the ball on average 34 times a game. However, haven't thrown for more than 25 pass attempts in 2 of the last 3 weeks. The Giants right now, pretty solid against opposing quarterbacks, allowing 14.9 fantasy points per game, 10th fewest in the NFL. When it comes to injuries, we have Marvin Jones and Jamal Agnew. Jamal Agnew, not overly worried about, but I would like to have Marvin Jones Jr. on the field, but I'm a simple man. All I care about is TDs. I'm sure that's what you care about as you're watching this video as well. And right now, Trevor Lawrence is finding ways to score them in a variety of ways. And I love to see that from Trevor Lawrence in a team that more than likely may be trailing in this game, playing from behind, has enough weapons at his disposal, and is this the week that a dump down pass goes the distance for Travis Etienne? I got Trevor Lawrence as a start. Now we'll go down to Tennessee for the Indianapolis Colts. Tennessee Titans. We'll start off with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is either elite or disgusting. Nothing really in between. Has 2 top 5 finishes at the position over the last 3 games played, and the last time he faced the Titans just a couple weeks ago, had 356 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He's had multiple touchdowns now in 3 of the last 4 games he's played. They're throwing the ball a lot, 42 times a contest. Last week, 58 times in that game. Going up against Tennessee, they allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks at 21.9. I'm actually going over to Prize Picks once again and smashing the over on the prop bet for Matt Ryan of 245.5 passing yards, a number now he's beaten 3 straight games, including that disgusting Denver game that we all had to watch a couple weeks ago. Their offensive line is still not 100%. The running game is banged up, but we did get Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor back at practice today. How much of an impact are they going to have? Can Jonathan Taylor please get the amount of targets that we saw Deion Jackson get last week? Please, can we sign a petition? Would everybody sign it? I think we would, because that would definitely help boost that floor every week of Matt Ryan. Obviously, we know this is an offense that can start to push the ball down the field, and a lot of that has to do with Alec Pierce. It's opening up the game for Michael Pittman there a little bit. We know their tight ends are a factor in the red zone. Really get these running backs going each and every weekend. The passing game, we may start Matt Ryan more often, because I'm going to here this week. His opponent, Ryan Tannehill, coming off the bye week. They had won 3 straight games prior to their bye, but they're really not relying on the passing game here very much, only throwing the ball 26 times a game, which is 30th in the NFL. Going up against Indianapolis, kind of a middle-of-the-pack defense, allowing 17.2 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Still no Treylon Burks and multiple injuries on this offensive line. I wanted to make him a fringe start. There's just not enough volume in this passing game and not enough options to throw down the field too for me to really expect a bigger day from Ryan Tannehill. I expect a lot of Derrick Henry in this ball game, and that's why I have Tanny as a sit. How about we go down to Washington now for the Packers and the Commandos, and we'll start off with Aaron Rodgers, currently sitting at quarterback 20, coming off back-to-back losses to the Giants and the Jets. Week 6 was the first game without multiple touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers since week 1. Now, Green Bay, on average, throwing the ball 36 times a game, going up against Washington, who allows the 9th most points to opposing quarterbacks at 19.4 per contest. But the pass-catching options are kind of dwindling, right? We no longer have Randall Cobb. Sammy Watkins was designated to return. I doubt that he's anything to worry about in the next few weeks. Christian Watson is questionable. This is why Aaron Rodgers says he wanted to simplify the offense, really go back to what works consistently, and it's when they give the ball, when they give the touches to Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. That's what I expect this week. It may be a lower ceiling for Aaron Rodgers, but if they can get the running game going, that's when we see something happen maybe down the field with a Romeo Doubs, or Doobs, as we like to say around here. A lower ceiling, not as confident, but still a start for Aaron Rodgers. His opponent, Taylor, give me a Heineke here for the Washington Commandos now with Carson Wentz not playing. And here we are back again, once again, as Taylor Heineke being the starter in Washington. He finished top 20 overall at the position last year, but very few high ceiling games. Only had 5 games on the year with multiple touchdowns. We know they're throwing the ball a lot in Washington, 38.7 times per game, is 6th most in the NFL, and I really don't expect that to change much here with the quarterback change. But going up against Green Bay is not ideal whatsoever. They are allowing only 11.3 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Now, full disclosure, though, their last 2 games were against Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson, which is making their numbers look a little bit better, but still, overall, a solid defense. Jahan Dotson still questionable. Logan Thomas still questionable. Offensive lineman Sam Cosmi still questionable as well. I love the storyline here of him getting another chance, but there is no way that this is a safe option to start this week. A lot of people are having to turn to Heineke with the bye week situation. I don't hate it, but I'm really seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 points or so. Maybe not that high ceiling game that a lot of people are hoping for when you have to have a guy like this fill in for the likes of Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, even Kirk Cousins. The ceiling just may not be as high. How about we go down to the New York Jets now and the Denver Broncos? We'll start off with Zach Wilson. And the Jets are playing great football. They've won 3 straight now with Wilson coming back, but it's not really because of Zach Wilson. He only has 2 total touchdowns over those 3 games, and the pass attempts have decreased each of the last 3 games played. He only had 18 pass attempts just last week in week 6. I'm starting to get some old school Trent Dilfer vibes going on here, where Zach Wilson is really just facilitating the offense. They're using their defense and their running game to win ball games. Now, Denver, right now, one of the best defenses against opposing quarterbacks. They're only allowing 10.7 fantasy points per game, second fewest in the league. No major injury concerns here affecting Zach Wilson. But honestly, the X factor has to just be dropped down a little bit lower because it's the running game and the defense that are dominating these ball games for the Jets each and every week. They're not having to rely on Zach Wilson throwing the ball 50 times a game to win. And when it's working, they're going to continue to try to do that each and every week, especially against a tough secondary there in Denver. His opponent, Russell Wilson. Now, he's currently quarterback 17 overall, but he is falling fast. Things are going from bad to worse. 3 straight losses now. His team, the Broncos as a whole, have only scored over 20 points 1 time in 6 games. With all that talent, that is crazy. Now, they're throwing the ball 33 times a game, going up against a Jets defense that is no joke right now. I mean, they're starting to click the sauce. The sauce is simmering in New York, if you know what I'm talking about, and they're only allowing 15.7 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. But here's the issue. Russell Wilson is not only just dealing with a shoulder injury, he now has a hamstring injury. Is it almost time to let her rip with Brett Rypien in Denver? My concern here is this. Russell Wilson starts the game, takes a hit, can't continue. We see Brett Rypien. Russell Wilson kills your fantasy week. Now, a lot of people out there are probably saying, no, I ain't even worried about Russ right now. I'm going elsewhere regardless. And honestly, I don't blame you. I've had him as a sit for weeks, and he's going to continue to remain that way. What about the Houston Texans and Las Vegas Raiders? 2 teams coming off their bye week. They had 2 weeks to prepare for each other. They're well rested. But does that mean that I want to start Davis Mills? No. I mean, this passing offense, I highly doubt just did a complete 180 over the 1 week bye. I don't think that happened. Now, they're throwing the ball 33 times a game. Las Vegas allows the most points to opposing quarterbacks at 25.5 per game. The offensive line not 100% here in Houston, but not too badly banged up. If there was ever a week to start Davis Mills, this would probably be it. But it is a huge risk, and it's something we have not seen consistently at all in Houston, and I do not want to take that risk. If you're looking for a bye week fill-in, he does have a good matchup though, just in case. His opponent, Derek Carr, like I said, also coming off the bye week, averaging right around 17 fantasy points per game, has had 2 touchdowns in 4 of the 5 games he's played also, averaging right around 37 pass attempts, which is 13th in the league, but Houston's secondary, Houston's pass defense, way better than their run defense. They're only allowing 13.7 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. No major injury concerns here. But in a game in which Josh Jacobs should be able to find some running success, I don't know if we see that overall ceiling for Derek Carr. However, I will say this. This is a team that has been struggling prior to the bye week and really needs to get things going right now if they want to have any chance at their season being somewhat of a success. In order to do that, you got to try to continue to keep your foot on the pedal until things start to click and work out. I'm not totally writing off Derek Carr. Confidence level may be a little bit lower here this week, though. How about the Seattle Seahawks, Los Angeles Chargers? For Geno Smith, I sat here, I made sweet eye contact with you last week, and I whispered into your ear that Geno was pretty good. And then he finished quarterback 19. I mean, he still has 10 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions on the season, 4 games with multiple touchdowns, and completing right around 70% of his passes, but last week just wasn't it for Geno. And he's not throwing the ball a ton, 31.7 times per game is 22nd in the NFL. Now a matchup going up against the Chargers, who allow just over 17 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. I would like to think that this defense is getting better here. That's why that number is coming down. But lately they've faced the likes of Davis Mills and Jacoby Brissett and Russell Wilson over the last few weeks. So it's not like they're really being tested here as of late. The offensive line more than likely be without Gabe Davis once again, but this team found success last week on the legs of Kenneth Walker. Does that turn them into a little bit more of a run-heavy team? Possibly. That's why I've lowered the X factor a little bit, but with the way that Geno is still playing, having the likes of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on the outside, still going to make him a fringe start. His opponent, Justin Herbert, who right now he himself is probably not feeling too fancy. He's currently quarterback 9 overall, and really when I was doing my notes for this, I started singing this song, "Where Have All the Touchdowns Gone?" And then I realized I was singing a song about a girl looking for cowboys, and it made me feel a little bit awkward. But he's only had 1 touchdown now over the last 2 games combined. He's throwing the ball more than anyone else in the league, though, at 43 pass attempts per game. Now going up against Seattle, they allow the 10th most points to opposing quarterbacks at 19.1 per game. But it's apparent that he is not 100% healthy as of right now from that rib injury that we saw him sustain a few weeks ago. He's playing through it. Does he get Keenan Allen back here this week? We know the offensive line still banged up. No Rashawn Slater. That really hurts this team, but he really needs Keenan Allen back. Keenan Allen is like the key to the offense, because right now defenses are focusing on Mike Williams, which in turn is really making this offense hard to move the ball deeper down the field. With Keenan on the opposite side, gives defenses more to worry about, opens up the entire field. Keenan is the key. Once Keenan returns, we probably see a bump in production for Justin Herbert. How about the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers? My Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week for the quarterback position. And don't forget, as soon as this video is over, head over to manscaped.com. Find yourself something good for the bathroom, fellas. It's not just ball trimmers. They have ear hair trimmers, nose hair trimmers, fingernail clippers, deodorant, lip balm. They even have some comfortable boxer briefs. Whatever it is you're looking for, make sure you use referral code HEADLINERS at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. But in this matchup, we have Patrick Mahomes and Jimmy G. It's kind of like where's Waldo, right? Like which one of these guys doesn't fit with the other? But Jimmy G's been playing pretty well, but so is Patrick Mahomes, who is currently quarterback 4 overall, having multiple touchdowns now in 5 of 6 games played. And we've actually seen a little bit of rushing lately from Patrick Mahomes, who's had more than 20 yards rushing in 4 straight games. We know in Kansas City they're going to throw the ball a lot, 6th most in the league at 38.7 times per game. Now a tough matchup going up against San Francisco, who technically is allowing the 4th fewest points to opposing quarterbacks at only 12.1, but right now that defense is pretty banged up. No major injuries for Patrick Mahomes to worry about, and honestly, the defense doesn't overly scare me when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. We've seen this guy go out there and throw 4 touchdowns for a combined like 25 yards passing to Travis Kelce. He finds ways to put points on the board. We're obviously starting Patrick Mahomes, but like I said earlier, Jimmy G's playing a little bit better. He's currently quarterback 22 overall, averaging just over 15 fantasy points per game, but now has 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games and is completing 65% of his passes. He's only throwing the ball just under 30 times a game at 29.8, but lately, over the last 2 weeks, he's throwing the ball 35 times a game, quite the increase for Jimmy G. Now going up against Kansas City, they allow the 3rd most points to opposing quarterbacks at 22. It's because teams are playing catch-up against them, and they're being forced to throw the ball all 4 quarters. Sure, Jimmy G's defense is banged up. It's a good thing, right? If Kansas City's putting up points, then Jimmy G's going to continue to throw to the likes of George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, maybe some Kyle Juszczyk. Can we get some more Jeff Wilson Jr. this week? Whatever it is, he has enough weapons in a game in which he's going to have to throw. I'll start Jimmy G here in a bye week fill-in week. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Miami Dolphins? We got Kenny Pickett. Maybe we have Mitchy Biscuits. I think it's going to be Kenny Pickett. Sounds like it's going to be Kenny Pickett going forward. But honestly, from a fantasy perspective, does it really even matter? I don't think we're going to start either one of these guys. Neither one of them have really been fantasy viable so far this year. Now, Pittsburgh throwing the ball around 35 times a game, middle of the pack, 16th in the NFL. Miami allows the 6th most points to opposing quarterbacks at 21.7. But technically, right now, Kenny Pickett not a full go. We also know that a lot of the players in the Steelers organization don't even like Mitchell Trubisky. Mitchy Biscuits is not a huge fan favorite there when it comes to the locker room in Pittsburgh. So a lot of question marks going on here. We also know that Pat Freiermuth is questionable. He should be back this week as well. Like I said, sounds like it's going to be Kenny Pickett. As long as he's healthy, that's the direction we know they're going to go. We just haven't really seen this offense take that step forward with no matter who is under center. So they're going to be a sit. For his opponent, it's the return of Tua Tagovailoa back after missing 2 games after that horrible concussion that we saw just a few weeks ago. And it's really hard to know what to expect here from Tua. That was a major injury. Sure, it was only 2 weeks, timeline-wise, but that was pretty scary. But this guy has overcome major scary injuries before, so at least we know he has the mental fortitude to go out there and try to put it behind him. The Dolphins averaging over 36 pass attempts per game. They're going up against Pittsburgh, whose defense is pretty beat up right now. They could get a few pieces back this week, but they're allowing over 20 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. What about Jalen Waddle? He's questionable this weekend. Do they have Jalen Waddle, in this offense? They need him to be out there so defenses can't double and worry about Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle is kind of similar to what we talked about earlier with Keenan Allen, the key to the offense. With both those guys in there, it's really hard to stop them both. We need Jalen Waddle on the field. And then, once again, Tua himself, how does he respond coming back off of these concussions? Is he gun shy at all in the pocket? Is he, hesitant to make decisions quickly? Whatever it may be, but it's going to be an emotional return for him. And it's a home game, which is great, but we need Jalen Waddle in this offense. If we don't have him, we're looking for more Mike Gesicki. But right now, Tua, a fringe start in a good matchup. Then we have Monday Night Football, the Chicago Bears and the New England Patriots. For the Bears, we finally get Justin Fields to have a good game. The best game he's had all year, and then he re-aggravates an injury in his non-throwing shoulder. He had a season high in pass attempts at 27 here in week 6, which is great considering the first 5 weeks of the season he barely hit 20 as an average, but now he gets to go to New England, on the road in New England. Not even sure if he can play 100%, at least it is his non-throwing shoulder, but the last thing you want is for him to take a sack, scramble out of the pocket, land on that shoulder, and then be done for the day. I don't think a whole lot of people were contemplating starting Justin Fields right now, but I'm not tempting that he's a sit. And then lastly, Bailey Zappi / Mac Jones. Who is this going to be? There is drama in New England, a mid-season quarterback controversy. I'm seeing reports start to surface that people within the Patriots organization are having some trouble with Mac Jones's attitude. Plus, you couple that with Bailey Zappi going out there and performing, we got some trouble here in New England. Who's it going to be going forward? You got Bill Belichick really being non-committal if Mac Jones is healthy. Is he the starter? Bailey Zappi last week, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions on the road to beat Cleveland. They're throwing the ball 34 times a game. Chicago allows only 15.1 fantasy points per game. But because we're unsure about this situation, I'm not going to attempt it, right? We don't know for sure about Mac Jones as of yet. They're saying he's right around 90% ready. Damian Harris, questionable. Nelson Aguilar, questionable. Kendrick Bourne, questionable. And then the quarterback controversy on top of that. As much as I like what I've seen from Bailey Zappi, I don't know if I can trust it, especially in primetime football on Monday night, so he's going to be a sit as well. And there you have it, my starts and sits for the quarterback position here, Week 7 fantasy football. Some tough bye week fill-ins here. This week are some big name studs on bye, but we'll get through this and make sure that we have the best team possible for you to walk away with as many wins as we possibly can here this week. And if you enjoyed the content, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to get out of here for the day. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.